Welcome back to the One Mic with Big Mike show here live on Spreaker.com. I'm also heard on the Spreaker app. Tune in, and, of course, the website, onemicwithbigmike.com. Don't forget, if you want to text the show, you can text in at 404-902-8104. You can also leave your comments and questions below the live streaming video on Facebook, or just jump inside my live interactive chat room if you're listening via Spreaker. Right now, as promised, one of the coldest shooters to ever lace up a pair of basketball shoes, champion, all-star, three-point champion 3 times over. He's also an author of the book Long Shot, The Struggles and Triumphs of an NBA Freedom Fighter. My man, Craig Hodges. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at Craig Hodges NBA as well. I definitely 100% appreciate Craig doing this. Let me start off with just taking you down memory lane with me real quick. I grew up here in Atlanta, but while we were here in Atlanta, we had the WGN network where all the Bulls games were on. Like, you were the first dude that I never, ever thought was going to miss a shot. Like, every time you shot the basketball, straight up, every time you shot the basketball, I felt like it was going in. And I remember hearing you as a kid. I don't know if I heard this or I read this, but you talked about winning those 3-point contests. And you said something like, you look at the rim always. You never take your eye off the rim. And you always look at the ball. Like, where did that come from? And then also that little bounce, that little rhythm bounce you had before you shot the ball was so ill to me. Like, where did that style of shooting come from?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on your show, man. For me, shooting's been something that I was doing at a young age, but as I got older, it became a little more precise in what, the form of it. And when I think back about what you're focusing on when you're shooting, for me, it's one of those things where I'm always concentrating on about 6 inches above the rim. It may look like I'm looking at the rim, but I'm not. And from that standard, it's just being able to make sure that keep everything calm and composed. And you've done it so many times before that there's no reason not to be able to make every one of them. And my mindset during the contest is just take your time and try to make every shot, even if you don't get through all the balls.
Absolutely. A guy whose name really rarely ever comes up, and we'll talk about why that may be in just a second here. But when you start talking about, you start talking about the Dale Ellises of the world and the Larry Birds of the world and even the 3D Dennis Scotts of the world, like, people rarely get to the name Craig Hodges. Tell me about Craig Hodges. Right. Tell me about young Craig Hodges growing up in Chicago before everybody heard about the dashiki thing, the letter to the president.
Right.
Who was Craig Hodges, the guy coming up in Chicago before all that?
Well, I'm a baby of the civil rights movement. Okay. I was blessed that, my family was a strong supporter of Dr. King and understanding the need for human and civil rights. And for me, being a baby of that, I was able to see a lot of things early in life from a real lens, man. And my mom was very instrumental as secretary of the movement in our area. So caring about people wasn't anything new when I got to the league. It was a matter of basically something that had been fostered in me for a long time. And then I was able to somewhat take it from a creative base of my own individual perspective. And having been blessed to study at Long Beach State in the Black Studies Department, I was blessed to have a perspective that I could really draw upon from my ancestral heritage.
Talking right now with former NBA sharpshooter, 3-time 3-point champion, Craig Hodges. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at Craig Hodges NBA. Now, I mentioned the trip to the White House. Let's give people the backstory for those of you who may not know. Right. Craig Hodges is a guy who played on those championship ball clubs with Michael Jordan in Chicago. Once they won the championship, he ended up doing the ceremonial thing, going to the White House. My man shows up clean, dashiki, you know what I mean? While he's there, handed a letter to the president's secret security people, and the letter inevitably got to the president. A letter kind of describing the things that troubled Craig that were going on as it pertained to black people in the country and that we currently live in. Now, before that, before we got to that point, who was Craig Hodges, the activist now, before that? Because I think now we've gone from where you got it from, your parents being children of the civil rights movement, to all the way to the White House. But before that, what was going on philanthropically with Craig Hodges?
Well, I think probably the biggest part of helping my foundational growth was what I had at Long Beach State and the Black Studies Department at Long Beach, as far as giving us an understanding of who we were as a people, giving us an idea of what our responsibility is as the next generation of leadership, and don't be afraid to speak truth to power. And I think that's the biggest part for me, is just to realize that you have a platform to speak from. You have guys who have already showed you the plan, as far as Muhammad Ali, Kareem, Dr. King, the Malcolm. So the ancestors give you guidance. And that's all I was moving on, man, was the ancestral realization that they gave me information and knowledge, and now I get a chance to go to the most important man on the planet as far as the president in the Western world is concerned, and speak on behalf of my people, man, who I know wouldn't get a chance to speak on their own.
That's mad ill. The other dichotomy of your situation is the fact that I mentioned earlier, you were on the team. For people who don't know, you were on the team with Michael Jordan, a guy who's infamous for his lack of speaking forward, or at least the perception of his lack of speaking forward, outwardly speaking forward. Right. Were there any times, any conversations that went on between you and him in those regards while you guys were teammates?
Oh, no question, man. And that's the biggest part of it. You know, in terms of when you're in a work environment, whether it be basketball, just any type of environment, certain conversations go on, whether it be at the coffee table, at the water cooler, or whether in the locker room. Everybody has an opinion and voices that opinion. And Michael was no different. And him being the leader of our team, he had opinions on things, but those opinions wouldn't get out in public. And those of us who would speak out, he would chime in on the conversation, but it would never go any further, especially to the public. How
did that make you feel, being a guy who was, for lack of a better term, you didn't have the notoriety that he had, or the maybe the pull that he had, as far as being a black man that had the attention of white America the way he did? How did that make you feel?
Well, and that's the beautiful thing of having been where I've been in my life, having studied what I studied, that it didn't discourage me from doing what I had to do. And I think that's the biggest part, is that we have to realize everybody's going to come to their consciousness when they do, and we can't be discouraged because they may not be at the place where we would like them to be, or even maybe where we are at a given point in time, but just try to plant the seeds and hope that at some point in time, the realization will come that, hey, man, I have a lot of power that I can wield and I can help a lot of people with.
Talking right now with former two-time NBA champion, 10-year veteran in the NBA, sharpshooter extraordinaire, Craig Hodges, right now on the One Mic with Big Mike show. The reason that I wanted to have you on, the reason I so fervently went after getting you on, because while I was doing my research for the show, I ran into this article, and I want to read it to you. Adam Silver, the new commissioner, the latest commissioner of the NBA, he says, quote, "To me, if a player were to choose not to go to the White House, whether they were choosing not to go to the current White House or the future White House, which is now Donald Trump's White House, my response would be, that's a lost opportunity, because that's an opportunity for most citizens who have a political point of view would kill for. The opportunity to directly tell the president of the United States how they feel about an issue. Now, if the president were to say, I have no interest in what members of the NBA think about an issue, that might surprise me, and I might have a different response." So what he's saying is something totally different from your man, David Stern. Now, the part of the story that I didn't tell is after this thing happened at the White House with Craig, he essentially got blackballed from the NBA. The league's leading three-point shooter by percentage couldn't get a job in the NBA. And now, fast forward 25 years, Craig, the new commissioner is saying, yeah, you should go. You should voice your opinions. When you hear that, how does that make you feel? How does that make you feel over time that things have seemingly changed that much?
Well, it's hopefully I feel like maybe Adam was watching me and he couldn't say anything because he was a deputy type cat at that point in time, but he felt the righteousness in what was going on. So maybe he's realizing it like that. And just today I heard Martellus Bennett said he's not going to go. So it's interesting, man. You just have to utilize it, and you have to pick your battles and be prepared to fight them the way that you feel like you have to, or what you're capable of doing to get a victory.
Speaking of Martellus Bennett, the new athletes, the new athletes and their version, I guess I should say, of activism. I've been critical of some guys on my show where I feel like guys stay in that safe space. Even when you're man, even when Michael Jordan finally broke his silence, he still rode the fence. He was like, I'm going to give $1 million to the black folks, and I'm going to give you the $1 million to the police. You know what I'm saying? And I think now the climate is of such where people get praised for being courageous, for doing the obvious. Like, I don't think there's anything courageous about 4 black dudes on the stage at an awards show saying, please don't kill black people, police. You know what I mean? Like, that's not courageous. That's just common sense. Like, what idiot would say that's wrong?
Yeah, so for me and my son talk about, you have the safety net of salary and social media today where that safety net wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of it is, where we at today, man. And when I look at, the visibility part of it, we need all hands on deck right now. We don't really need I'm an invisible sponsor. I'm not going to tell people what I'm doing. I do what I do behind the curtain or whatever. We need to see it, man. It needs to be visible, proactive movement that everybody pulls their weight. Everybody knows what lane we're rolling in. And I do my role, you do your role, MJ does his, Hodges does his, and then we got a blanket, man. We have a blanket of not only protection just in case somebody wants to, pull your salary from under you, but you also have a support base of like-minded people.
What'd you think about Colin Kaepernick? Like, as soon as that happened, I got Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf on the phone, and we talked, and I think I sent you the interview. So me and him spoke about that, the similarities and the differences and whatnot. But what did you think? Your initial impression on when you heard this young backup quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers decided he wasn't going to stand for the pledge, and the reasons why, which I think is really more important because it's become convoluted over the months. But the reasons why he wasn't standing, what was your initial impression of that?
And like I said, my main thing was I supported him from the standpoint of just from a spiritual end to know that, to be in that space and time, to be at the top of your career, to be at that point in your life where, just from age, and you feel almost invincible, 29, 30 years old. Mm-hmm. So I feel good. I feel good that he felt the need to stand up, and he stood up articulately. It's not everything that he spoke about, he was able to base on stuff that he studied. He researched it. It wasn't like he was coming off in an article that he read about, but he's done his own research, man. And I think that's the beautiful part and the dichotomy of what this nation stands for. It tells us one thing to go to school and study, but now when you go to school and study things that you want to study and you're able to articulate those positions from the intellectual community, it's not palatable, man. And I think that's the thing that we have to continue to strive for and be able to stand on with those resources that we garner, that people can speak up and teach the way we need to teach in order that we can become re-educated, man.
That's real. Do you stand for the pledge or for the anthem or whatever?
Yeah, I do, man. It's not that, and the thing is just being respectful. It's being respectful. It's not a matter that I stand for what you stand for, but I respect what you are. Gotcha. And I respect the fact that, you've done what you've done, and even to the point where we got a right to stand, man. We bled and died for the flag, man.
Right.
So we're even more patriotic because we built the country. So it's ours.
The other voice that you're hearing on the One Mic with Big Mike show right now is Craig Hodges, former NBA player, 10-year veteran in the NBA, sharpshooter, 3-time three-point contest shooter, at Craig Hodges NBA on Twitter. You led me to something else I wanted to talk to you about. This notion, when you start talking about, people wanting you to use the education but then get mad at how you use it. I feel that same way when it comes to athletes using their voice. Like, people are trying to disguise their undertones of racism in, well, this is sports. Politics don't belong here. Well, or social issues don't belong here. Well, if that's the case, athletes shouldn't be able to speak out about domestic violence. They shouldn't be able to speak out about animal abuse. They shouldn't be able to speak out about hungry kids. But no one says anything about those things. But as soon as you say, hey, how about the police stop killing black kids for no reason in the streets? Then it's like, we don't want to hear that. Exactly. Why is that, Craig? Exactly. Where does the attitude come from in sports?
I think that's that. And that's when we talk about the tentacles and the mechanisms of white supremacy racism. There you have it. You have the idea that what we talk about isn't important and that it doesn't really matter to the larger piece. But I think that just for that, when we take our economics and look at where they stand in the world, and we'll see how important the role is that we can play, even if it's nothing but drawing our economic side of this thing, you're starting from scratch. So it's our time, man. It's our time on a lot of levels. And I'm just thankful to God that I'm able to here to be a part of the solution.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because, like, that's something that I need help with. I talk about it on my show quite frequently. I mean, I do a sports show, but I'm not limited to sport because this is my thing, and I talk about whatever's going on. And I have a problem, especially with what's going on now with the orange beast that's in the White House right now. The fact that reconciling the numbers game, the fact that as a black man, I'm only 13% of this thing. And of that 13%, they locking me away at every turn for everything. So then you got a percentage of that 13 that's locked in the penitentiary and can't vote. Then you got another part of that 13 that's just not old enough to vote yet. With numbers that small, I need help reconciling a way to make a difference and help change because I don't see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. And that's the biggest part, man, is that it's so the proportions are such that it's definitely to a point at some point that, when we look at just numerically the things that are going on, incarceration rates,
right,
recidivism rates, it's just one of those things where we have to understand the economics of it, that it's free labor, man, and the free labor involved is black and brown people, man, and that's why I'm coaching now at my old high school, getting these young brothers to realize that being a student athlete can alleviate some of the, the potential threats in your life, but you got to make sure that you maximize your opportunity and find your passion early and work as hard as you can, man. It's just a matter of work habits and work ethic is what we got to get our young men to realize that we have a part to play in this thing, and your life absolutely matters. But if you're not taking yourself serious, nobody else will.
You talk about being back at your old high school. Like Chicago's been in the news lately. A lot for bad, the murder rate and all that stuff. I was looking at something the other day that was very alarming. I think it was 60 Minutes. There's another issue with the police in Chicago, whereas they've pretty much decided they weren't going to do their jobs anymore. And then the numbers that have come out say the number of stops by the police have gone so far down, and in concert, the numbers of violent crimes and murders have gone so far up. And it almost seems as though, to me, that the people who are in charge of caring have stopped caring about the people in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, and that's why I say, man, at this point in our history, man, it's time for us to love ourselves, take care of ourselves, and see after ourselves. And I think I can't ask anybody else. I can't ask Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, to handle and help the black community. I got to take it on myself, man. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing here, and hopefully we can go ahead and unify ourselves in the city, because at 785 murders going into the new year, ridiculous, man. And it's a lot of money to be made in the death of black people for other people. So we got to cut down the numbers that they're making on our murders, man.
I said, dang, that's so crazy, because I talk about that all the time, man. It's like when these white folks want to run around and talk about, what's all this Black Lives Matter? Like, I've been knew my life mattered to you, but it matters to your pockets. How much you can lock me up, how much you can kill me.
Bottom line.
Yeah, no doubt.
Bottom line.
Got a couple things left for you, man. I'm talking to Craig Hodges. I definitely appreciate your time, man. Make sure you guys are following Craig at Craig Hodges NBA. Let's do some word association. When I say David Stern, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
A coward.
Okay.
Coward for not standing on it. Coward on that principle. When you see what Donald Sterling was able to get away with, man, for years at a time, man. And then you see that what Danny Ferry was able to say, then you know that you were able to just take money, $30 to $40 million of whatever you were being paid, and continue a policy of racism. And I don't agree with that. I think that's cowardly. And I think it's one of those things that puts everybody in a position of a bad light.
Dude, just think about that. And this is what I was talking to Mahmoud about. Like, how crazy was it? Like, living in 2017, thinking about a time where a dude speaks out, uses his American rights, and gets suspended from his job. You know what I mean? Like, how wild of a concept is that?
And like I said, I tell people all the time, what I went through was something, and it was cold. But what they did to my brother Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, I was the best shooter in the game, but I think at that point he was the best player putting the ball in the basket in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that the game is basketball and you don't allow this man to do what he's capable of doing and to reach his God-given potential and his passion, that's crazy, man. And I think, once again, David Stern.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
And his policy.
Jerry Reinsdorf / Jerry Krause. When I say those names, what comes to mind?
Power brokers.
Okay.
And I'm going to say power brokers from the standpoint of being able to realize what they had in Michael. Reinsdorf understood what he had in Michael and the ability for Michael to be able to manifest a whole lot of money for the Chicago Bulls, and then at the same time, Jerry Krause was able to manipulate the system and bring in guys that understood how to get things done on that level, man. So, they were power brokers, man. And in the city of Chicago, they were really power brokers.
You still got a relationship with Jordan?
I haven't talked to MJ probably in about 3 or 4 years, man. But I'm cool with everybody, man. I ain't got, ain't no reason for us to have no beef. I ain't got no beef with nobody, man.
I can dig it.
I ain't got enough money. We ain't got enough bread to have no beef with nobody yet.
Amen. All right, look at man. I can't let you out of here without talking ball with you though, man, because I think right now the league is in a good place. I like what I'm watching basketball wise. I grew up in the days in the 90s, but I can still appreciate I don't have to see somebody get punched in the face by somebody else to think basketball is tough. So from a shooter's aspect, who you like watching now? They shoot the basketball.
I love how Steph shoots it. Steph shoots it like I shot it. So I like how he shoots it. I like Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
He's a shooter. I talked to Westbrook a little bit about shooting, so I like to think that the things that we talked about helped his shooting from years ago. So it's a lot of young guys shooting the ball at a good rate and at a good, good precision shot, as opposed to you seeing a guy who shoots the ball and his ball is all over the place.
What kind of stuff did you talk to Russ about his shot? Because that dude is getting crazy numbers this year, my man.
Yeah, just, I told him one of the things that I talked to him about was, shooting his ball out of a 2-foot jump shot is going to give you more consistency. So when you see him coming to them elbows, and he's pulling up out of a 2-foot jump shot, I like to think that's something that he and I discussed. But if not, I'd still love seeing it happen that way because that's the most consistent way to shoot the basketball.
Absolutely. That's the craziest thing about Steph, man, because he got those crazy handles, but he always find a way to get himself back on like perfect balance for that quick release jump shot. And I don't think people realize that they see the handles and they see the shot, but the way he gets back to it, and it's so unblockable, a three-pointer.
Right, and that's the key it's a transition game. So your transition from your dribble to your shot is a transitional part of the game also. So the smoother you can make it, the better you become. And he's top at it right now.
Absolutely. Last thing I got for you, because you mentioned...
Can't forget Kyrie Irving. Can't forget Kyrie.
Definitely. Kyrie's he's sweet at the basket, too.
Yeah.
He's one of the best bad shot makers in the league. I say that respectfully.
Exactly.
Last thing I got for you, you talked about doing work at your old high school. Now, what are the kind of things you up to now? Right. Because now it seems to be the age of people getting back to marching and people getting back to voicing their stances on things. What's a guy like Craig Hodges been up to in any area?
Well, like I said, just finished my book, and that was one of the biggest things in my life, man. And as far as challenges and looking forward to doing something. And now I have a platform to speak from and being able to use my book as a way to get young people to realize that, you can do something that not all the time you see as something that may happen in your life, but you never know what time holds for you and what God has in store for you.
Where can people get the book, Craig?
You can get it at Amazon, as well as you can get Haymarket. Book School is the publisher for it. But I'll be coming down there at some time to sign some books, hopefully.
Real deal. Long shot, the struggles and triumphs of an NBA freedom fighter. My man, Craig Hodges. This is probably one of the top, you and Mahmoud and Kenny Anderson. I'm going to say my 3 best interviews I've done on this show in the year plus that I've done this, man. Not good because of me, good because of the content that you're bringing, my man. I appreciate it. Talk to you down the road, my man.
Peace.
You got it.
All right. Peace.